Hi, this is Larry Shaheen from the McIntosh law firm. We wanted to take a moment today to go over this Paycheck Protection Program loan forgiveness application that was issued on Friday by the Department of Treasury and the Small Business Administration. Now, a lot of us have seen stories in the news and other things coming out from the federal government based on exactly what they're going to be doing with guidance on this. So we expect there to be further guidance, but for now, what's all that matters is that you make sure that you understand exactly what you're going to have ready to make sure you're able to go through this loan forgiveness application. Now, we've got it up here on the screen for you because we wanted to make sure we were able to go through it. Most important thing, first and foremost, is that you've got three different forms that you've got to go through. You've got your loan forgiveness calculation form, your PPP Schedule A, and the PPP Schedule A worksheet. Now, you're optionally are going to be able to go through a borrower demographic information form, but you do not have to fill that out, and that is not required for their lender. You do have to fill out and turn in your loan forgiveness calculation form, that's this one right here, and the PPP Schedule A, that's this one right here. You have to turn those in for forgiveness, and you have to provide all of the supporting documentation to make sure that those are actually verified and that you are able to get the loan forgiven. So let's start off with the instructions for the loan forgiveness calculation form, which is basically going to be the application. You've got to keep everything the same as you did with the loan that you made earlier. You've got to make sure your name's the same, address is the same, contact is the same. Your SBA PPP loan number, your lender can get you that. Your lender's going to make sure to fill out the lender loan number. The loan amount needs to be the total loan that you received from the lender. That's the dispersed amount. And then what you're going to do is you're going to have to make sure that you've got your employees at the time of loan application, employees at the time of forgiveness. Those are going to be what you certified on the loan that you gave to the actual bank. So again, the bank is going to be the clearinghouse, and the bank is where you're going to start. Again, your PPP loan disbursement date is going to be the date from which you received the PPP loans. That's one of the two possible covered periods. You've got to remember that your covered period starts the day that you get the loan, or it starts the day of the first payroll that starts after you made it. That's what's now called the alternative payroll covered period. So again, that's going to be a very important thing to understand, is that you have a selection. You can select the traditional covered period, or you can select your alternative payroll covered period. Those two are important to know. In terms of how this will interact with an economic impact disaster loan, economic injury disaster loan, you've got to make sure that you put the advance amount in there, because it's going to be rolled into your EIDL. So ultimately, either this or the other are going to be your refinance debt. So you want to make sure that all of the debt instruments are all working together. Your payroll schedule is going to be as often you pay payroll. And then, of course, it's going to be very important for you, again, to discuss this covered period. We kind of went through that, but your alternative payroll covered period, again, for example, if the borrower received your loans on Monday, April 20th, and the first day of your first pay period following your PPP loan disbursement is Sunday, April 26th, the first day of your alternative payroll covered period is April 26th, and the last day of the alternative payroll covered period is June 20th. This is new. This is not something that was discussed in the law, and it was not something that was discussed in regulations until this application came out. And again, if you received loans in excess of $2 million, you want to make sure that you check this box so that you are not automatically thrown into the auditing process. Because if you have below $2 million in loans, you're not going to have an automatic audit. Now, when you go into your amount calculation, you want to make sure that you talk about your total eligible payroll costs incurred during the covered period or the alternative covered period. You have to calculate those costs on the PPP Schedule A. You have to get all of your mortgage interest payments, your business rent or lease payments, business utility payments for all of these issues which service or debt or rent began before February 15th. Those are the dates. You can't have a lease go into effect March 1 and still be able to pay it out of the PPP loan. That is not how this is supposed to be done. So in all of these other lines, these are going to be exactly how you go in and calculate these numbers. If you're talking about salary and hourly wage reductions in excess of 25%, that's going to reduce the forgiveness amount. You've got to go in and look at your full-time equivalency employee reductions. Those can reduce the amount. And then you've got to go in and determine whether or not your payroll was 75% of the total cost. If it is, you're good. You don't have to worry about it. So here is your summary of costs eligible for forgiveness. They go into your eligible payroll costs, your eligible non-payroll costs. A lot of folks have asked about insurance. Some insurance is covered, and payroll is covered under insurance for medical need or folks that benefits your employees. So for example, if you've got workman's comp insurance, if you've got liability insurance, those should potentially be able to be looked at, but I would talk with your bank. Again, each bank is going to be determining what is and what is not a covered payment. So then ultimately, again, you've got to remember your payroll is going to be needs to be at least 75% of your eligible payroll costs, and your eligible non-payroll costs can be no more than 25%. Here's an example that we've seen that makes this play out. Say, for example, you have a mortgage rent obligation that is more than 25%. You can pay the whole thing, but it will not all be forgivable. So what you want to do is only pay out of this loan the portion that's forgivable and hold back the amount that you would have used and try and use it for payroll costs or for something else that is forgivable, because you can still prepay this loan. It is not a big deal. So here's the actual form for application. Again, we went through all this. If you have questions, call us. We're happy to help. Here are the most important parts. These are the certifications, because you're going to calculate all of the numbers in the back end, but you want to make sure that you've got all this stuff worked out. So the dollar amount for which forgiveness is requested, you have to certify that you've checked all of these things and that you are actually making sure that you've got it correct. A big change that they made this time was that 8 weeks of compensation for $100,000 individuals over a year, those have been capped at $15,385. They got to that number by dividing 8 weeks of $100,000 in payments, or 52 weeks of $100,000 in payments, and dividing it by 8. That is a change from what it originally was, which was over a 12-month period, and the 12-month period number is higher than the 8-week number. So if you have been paying people more than this, you want to make sure that you're dialing it back. Again, you have to certify that you know that you did not use this for unauthorized purposes, or for and that you are not currently doing so, because they will come after you on that. You have to verify the payments for eligible and non-payroll costs with invoices. You have to submit the regular documentation. You have to make sure you're not making false statements, and you have to make sure that the tax documents are identical. They say consistent. It's not what they want. They do want identical. What you used to get this loan needs to be what you submit to the IRS. That's vital. And then lastly, and most importantly, you have to understand that the SBA can come back and get you for this. You have to make sure that you keep all of your documentation ready, because they can come back and get you more application. Furthermore, once your bank is on your side, they're going to give it to the SBA. But the SBA is also going to review it. So they could direct a lender to disapprove. If that happens, you definitely want to get counsel, and you want to make sure you're talking to your payroll company, your accountant, or your lawyer. Now, here are the instructions for your Schedule A worksheet. These are going to be how you go through your tables. The table is essentially just a salary sheet. It's how you're paying people and what they're paid, all the information that you're going to need. Most of the time, you're going to be able to get this from your payroll company. If you aren't getting this from your payroll company, then you're going to need to create it yourself. And you have to make sure that you have all of the total cash amounts paid for employee health insurance, contributions to self-insurance, employer-sponsored group health plan, but you have to exclude any pre-tax or after-tax contributions by the employees. You include the total amount for contributions to retirement plans, but you have to exclude pre-tax or after-tax contributions by employees. You have to put in state and local taxes. You are not going to get any withholding forgiveness, and you're also not going to be able to get any of the federal amounts forgiven. And then you've got your enter any amounts paid to owners. That's you. Or if you're a self-employed individual, you're only going to get an 8-week equivalent of the applicable compensation in 2019, or $15,385, whichever is lower. If you are someone who did not max out at $100,000 when you made this loan, and you try to get the full loan forgiven, you are not going to see that happen. You have got to make sure that if you are a Schedule C self-employed individual, that you are giving yourself only 8 weeks of compensation out of that loan, because that's all that will be forgiven. Again, you have to calculate your full-time equivalents. That's essentially going to be, in the case, you have several different selection periods where you can calculate that. It's February 15th to June 30th, January 1st to February 29th of this last year, or this year, February 15th to June 30th of last year, or in the case of seasonal employers, either the preceding periods or a consecutive 12-week period between May 1st and September 15th. For each employee, you want to use the same method that was used to calculate the average FTE on the worksheet. So you're going to want to sum across all the employees and enter that total into the line. Now, there is a safe harbor. If you have tried to bring them all back and they didn't choose to come back, you're forgiven. That means that you're not going to have to worry about it. And you're going to have to, if you are dealing with the safe harbor, you definitely want to make sure that you're talking to folks about this. This is going to be a very complicated calculation. On your Triple P Schedule A, you've got your cash compensation, you've got your average FTE, you've got your salary wage reductions. Again, as we discussed, you include all of this from your Schedule A worksheet. Then you've got your non-cash compensation to owners, total payroll costs, average FTEs, total average FTEs, and then the FTE reduction quotient, or you enter 1 if the safe harbor has been met. So again, that's the most important part. That's your Schedule A. That's what you're going to have to submit. Now, your Schedule A worksheet is going to be what we talked about. It's going to be that payroll information that you have to keep a hold of. It's got your name, employee identifier, which can be the last 4 digits of the social, cash compensation, the average FTE, salary, hourly wage reductions, and all of those calculations. As you can see, if you reduced wages, it's going to be a bit of a complex calculation. If you did not reduce wages, you're going to be fine. Again, it's all about making sure that you're doing things the right way. But again, from a full-time equivalency and an actual salary and wage reduction, if you didn't reduce anything from a salary standpoint, you didn't reduce any employment, you have nothing to worry about. If you did reduce salary some, make sure that it's no more than 25%. If you did exclude or pull out employees, you want to make sure that you're asking them to come back to work. If they say no, yes, it will kick them off unemployment, but you will be able to put them in for forgiveness on this process. The White House is saying that they want folks to report to unemployment whether or not they're going back to work. They do not want this money going to folks who are offered work back and do not have it. That's also guidance from the state government. So this is a bipartisan issue. Don't think this is a concern. You need to make sure that you're reporting whether or not folks are taking these actual exceptions. And then, of course, you've got your reduction safe harbor from a standpoint of if you restore employment by June 30th, you're going to be okay. Because again, whether or not your covered period ends by June 30th, if you restore your full-time employment levels to June 30th levels, you are going to be fine. Here is an example of the worksheet. Again, you want your payroll company to provide this. If you have to make it yourself, give us a call, give your accountant a call. We can get it all worked out. And then here is another calculation for your full-time equivalency reduction safe harbor, which is what you want to go through to talk about how you get that. Here are the documents that you are going to have to submit in addition to the forgiveness application and your Schedule A. Payroll, your documentation verifying the eligible cash compensation, non-cash benefit payments from the covered period or the alternative payroll covered period, consisting of each of the following: bank account statements or third-party service providers recording documentation of the amount of cash compensation paid. Your tax forms, your Form 941 will cover it if that's what you're trying to do. And then, of course, payment receipts, canceled checks, or account statements documenting the amount to the employer contributions to the health insurance and retirement plans. Those have to be brought in. Second, full-time equivalency documentation. You have to show average number of FTEs on the payroll per month employed between February and June. You're going to want to show your average number of FTE employees on January or February if that's the election you're taking. Or if you're seasonal, you can select one of the 3 periods. You have to use the same time period as the time period that was selected for purposes of completing your Schedule A line 11. Those documents have to make sure that those coordinate, and they have to be able to be verified. And then, of course, for non-payroll expenses, for business mortgage interest payments, you need a copy of the amortization schedule, receipts, canceled checks, verifying eligible payments from the covered period, lender account statements, and you're going to want to make sure that you've got through 1 month through the end of the covered period, verifying interest amounts and eligible payments. Your business rent or lease payments, you're going to have to provide a current lease, and you're going to have to show that those payments were made, and you're going to have to show that they actually cleared. And then lastly, on business utility payments, copies of invoices from February 2020 and those paid during the covered period with receipts, canceled checks, or account statements verifying that they were paid. Now, those are documents you have to submit. There are documents that you have to maintain, but you are not required to submit. That includes your Schedule A worksheet. That includes the documentation supporting the listing of each individual employee. You have to show documentation regarding any employee offers, job refusals, firings for cause, voluntary resignations, or written requests by any employee for reduction. Those are all forgiven and given to the safe harbor, but you have to keep those on file. And then, of course, your documentation supporting your Schedule A worksheet, FTE reduction, safe harbor. Now, all records for this loan must be kept for 6 years. That's the key. If you do not keep it for 6 years and the SBA comes looking, you are going to be held accountable for that. Lastly, there is this demographic information form, which you can choose to fill out if you'd like, but you don't have to. But that's it. I know this is a lot of information, and it's very complicated and very complex, but we wanted to take a real short 15 minutes and make sure that we went through it with you. If you have questions or if you have concerns, please don't hesitate to give us a call. More than happy to help if we can. Thanks again. Have a great day.